I'm building something very similar to what I was doing, but I decided to try this different thing where I'm just gonna focus on. Obviously, I don't know how it's gonna go, so I might go back to the other way that I was doing. But I'm gonna try to build the scenes only using C++ code because I think it's very a lot simpler, so I can focus just on the things that matter. So basically, I just did a very similar thing that I did on the handlers, which is to change the code there on the setup and on the iteration so that if I pass an argument called Cortex, it's going to run an entry point function, and then I'm going to build scenes, and then I created a folder to host as the official project. So the way that I'm thinking about it is using this folder here on the scenes instead of the Cortex should serve as a scene generator thing. So from the code, I'm going to generate a bunch of things on this project here. There's parts of the Godot source code, and then if I want to develop further or change the scenes, I'm going to put the scenes on another project that I'm going to create outside in the usual way that you create projects, then change the scene from there, and then see if it's worth it to change the code again. So that way I keep this iteration, and then for every time that I improve the code, the scene from the editor, I just improve the code, and I build up a bunch of assets, which is going to be basically, because what I realize, and also I can just change the functionality on the node class, I think, to do what I want to do, if in case I want to keep or like merge updates, but I think that this way is probably gonna work. Because what I realize is that the only thing that matters is, like, there's three main components. One is the layout, the other one is components, which is just functions that build different parts of the scene from other nodes, and then there's the nodes. So the functionality is either going to be functions that connect different nodes, or it's going to be inside of the nodes themselves, or it's going to be the layout, which is just the initial structure for the scene. And the other main thing is going to be the doc manager. And I'm not really sure when I'm going to focus on that, but the doc manager I'm probably going to leave outside here. So the way that I'm thinking about doing this is put the scene entry points on this folder here, then call from the Cortex CPP. Then I just save the scene, so I don't need to retrieve the initial state. I always refresh with whatever I put here. And then the complexity is going to come from the classes or the functions that I create there. The scenes are just going to be composition. I assume that they're not going to be very big because most of the complexity is probably going to be on the layouts and on the components themselves, because it probably makes more sense to keep the functionality for docs inside of classes, but I'm not really sure. Obviously, it's going to depend on situations. But even if it's not worth it to keep in class, I can just create a component and then do composition. So based on the layouts I create, I'm going to create standard names that are the names of the docs for each layout, and try to keep consistency between them. And then the doc manager is probably going to use those names to allow changing the docs from places. And the other difficult part is going to be figuring out the functionality to connect different things. Because an application or anything you're going to do is always going to be a finite state machine that connects trees, which are the things. And a tree is just the hierarchy of causes. So that's what I'm trying to do now. And it's just a lot simpler this way, so I usually always try to reduce the annoying complexity that gets in the way of what I want to do. So what I'm trying to do now is there's an error there that, because of the way that I had to do the icon sidebar, I had to create a sidebar icons folder inside of the project, because I think that's the best way to do. Basically, the logic on the icon sidebar, which is going to be like trying to reproduce what you have on the IDE here, is going to be based on whatever files or whatever PNG or SVG like pictures you have inside of this folder here, and the name of the picture is going to be the name of the component. So if I want an icon that is going to change some doc of the scene to represent like the physics slider, for example, the name of the icon would be physics slider, and then the logic of the component uses class DB to retrieve the class from that name, and then change the state of the target node based on the name. So like obviously, and this is something else that I just thought that I probably gonna have to change, because the way that I'm doing the sidebar is based on the VBox container. So I'm thinking about making a slider, because I know that there is a container for being able to slide, and then I'm just gonna put like a bunch of icons on this project here. And then if I want to change on different projects, I just obviously take the only ones that I want, depending on the project. Or maybe this is another thing, like the way that it's going to scale probably is that the variance of the data is going to be changed, or is going to reflect the arguments of the functions, because it's going to allow me to shape the state of the components based on the flow of the arguments from the functions that I'm calling here through the composition. And I think that this is probably the most, like the biggest difference between different things in different applications is just that the structure is always the same, which is the laws of physics, for example. Laws of physics are heuristics for the universe because they are approximation of a network. So the gravitational force of the network creates the laws of physics, which is the abstract symbolic representation of the network from space and time. And this is gravity, I think. So what changes is the data. And that's why the past always repeats itself, but it's never the same, because the data changes over time. But space remains the same. So, because the space is the field of perception. So, the structure of the scenes are always going to be the same. And the connection between scenes are like portals that create the finite state machine. So, if you want, like the main difference between applications is going to be how the portals are connected, like the path of travel between different portals, which are different trees that represent different scenes, and the state of the scene, which is the reflection of the data that you want to visualize on the scene. So I think that creating things this way makes a lot more sense, and it's probably going to be more scalable, because then I don't need to think about projects. I can just think about the fundamental principles. So the problem I have now is that it's leaking resources because I have to free the nodes. So this function is the main entry point for the first function that I'm trying to create, which will be ID scene. So I'm creating the layouts, creating the environments. I also realized that there was a problem with the environments. The reason why the nodes were showing up as whites because of the energy. So you have to put, the default is 1, so I just commented out. But if you put more, then they become light, or they become more of the color you set on the ambient color. So, but it's basically I just copied this function from the other stuff that I was doing, and then I put in here. And I think I'm gonna have to change this. It's very similar to React, the way that I'm thinking about it. It's probably gonna, like the more stuff you put, the more annoying it becomes, but I'm gonna try to maintain as simple as possible, because the complexity is gonna come anyway. And the other thing that I had to do is just to declare the node, the type as node, which is kind of a weird thing, because when I was accepting, so on the other stuff that I had, I was structuring this to accept the roots of the scene as an argument, and then I was adding the node that I created here as a child of the root, and then I wasn't returning anything. But the problem is, so it was working fine, but then I realized that probably in a lot of cases what I want to do is to change the environment from outside of the function. So I think it makes more sense to return the environment, because then encapsulate this logic that is always going to be the same on the function, and then outside is going to change depending on what kind of scene you're creating. But I'm probably going to do the class as well now, after I figure out what is wrong there. I'm going to Just create a simple class, environment manager or something like that, on the Brahma. And then I'm just gonna put this functionality here, but I'm probably gonna use the function, because I don't want to think about this too much. So I'm just gonna set up the class in case I have more environments in the future, and I think that it makes sense to encapsulate everything on a class. So the weird thing is that when you create the node from here, and then you try to add as a child from outside, then for whatever reason it complains about the type. So I don't understand very well why. And that's the reason why I had to put the type as a node and not rolled environment there. So I'm just creating the layout, creating the environment, then I find the doc based on the name that I selected there, which is the simulation. And I'm gonna have to change this because the way you inject a 3D world in UE visualization is by using this hierarchy here. You have to use another sub-viewport container, then sub-viewport, then you create a node 3D, and then you append the stuff you want for the visualization. So this is the most challenging thing, is figuring out where is the line of the composition to class. So when does it make sense to create a class, to encapsulate the components, and when does it make sense to create composition? But I'm just doing like this to test now. So the issue is that after I put this free thing here, she's supposed to delete all the nodes recursively, is not doing anything, and it seems that the thing is not being created. Like it only creates the root node of the thing. So I'm running the debugger to try to understand what's going on. And it says the name is empty. So I think that it probably is the name of the simulation doc, but it's kind of weird because that's how I'm doing on the other one. So oh, the other thing, I was getting this error that on the another thing that I was testing, I think is because I put the node 3D as the root of the scene, I think, and when it was updating the nodes, it was giving me this warning here, because the new nodes that it was comparing the old node. So like you had the scene already, and you want to, instead of adding the new node to the scene, because the nodes are already on the scene, I'm comparing the node that is supposed to be the new one with the one that is already on the scene, and then I'm updating the properties based on the new node, which is the node that I'm updating from code. But the issue is that that node is not a part of the scene, so it gives this warning here. So just change there the code so that I'm comparing to see if the transform 3D is empty or not, and if it isn't, then I update. But that's the reason why I put this breakpoint here. But it's just a duct tape solution. I couldn't think about a like better solution. But I think I'm probably gonna try to focus more on this way now of doing things, because I think it makes more sense. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to create a bunch of projects. It makes more sense to create like a generic thing, and then the projects are subsets of the. It's the same thing with programming languages, I think. Also, already gave in this. Hmm. I have to figure out when is trying this message here and to see if this is the reason why it's not creating anything there. So this is basically the code from the icon sidebar thing. So basically going over the project and then seeing if there are icons inside of the folder, the icon folder. I'm doing for SVG now, but maybe I'll do the other types later. And the way that I like this is the biggest. It's not really a problem, but it is kind of annoying that I think that I'm not really sure if there's a better way to do this, but the problem is that I'm doing based on the names, so it is kind of annoying because like it's more things you have to remember every time you create stuff. But I'm not really sure if there's a better way because if you don't do it by the name, then you lose flexibility, and also it's harder to think like the key part is the doc entry points. Is the docs is what matters. So if you do the docs by ID, it gets more annoying to think about the layout in your mind because it's harder to visualize. But then it's less things to think about when you create components, I think. But it's gonna end up being the same way, I think. So if create by names, because I think that there is not gonna be a lot of variance on layouts, I think it makes more sense to create standard names. But it's hard to think about the good names should serve as a standard because obviously the purpose of each thing is gonna be different. So that should be something generic. The one thing that I can test, the only thing is you can't put the breakpoints inside of here because it's called all the time. So what I can test is just call, run the thing again without deleting the stuff and then see if it's gonna save the scene because I didn't check last time. I only checked the first time, but then I changed a couple of things and then I didn't check anymore. It might be because I'm resaving the scene. That could be the problem as well. Because I only tested to see if we're saving the scene with a simple node. And the other thing, oh, so now it is printing this stuff here. But the other thing you can do is use, I think I'm gonna test this now. I guess Q, challenge. I think this, so this function is different because it makes a delete later. Also try to put the condition to run the endpoint of this function at the beginning of the iteration, but it's annoying because it leaks resources as well. So there's some stuff that happens inside of the iteration that probably like does something that I don't wanna spend a bunch of time thinking about it now. So I decided to just leave the way it is because it doesn't matter that much if it runs one iteration before stopping. Yeah, so this is the problem. I think it's because of this error here. So it has to be something else that is gonna. I don't remember if I definitely change other stuff. But it's probably because of this. But I'm not calling this function. It should be something else. I think it can't be anything related to the previous stuff. Wait, the only thing that makes sense is the simulation. I guess I can just test to see what happens if I create only the layouts. Because the weird thing is that this one is being set with this name, so let's see why it would be the problem. It might be because of the type. The thing is that the error was showing before it even went through the code here. So it might be something else. I think I don't need to change. Oh, I'm gonna show there what I did. So the reason why, like, I wanted to make it simple as possible, so I'm not passing the editor flag, because I just looked into how they do the other flags, and then this basically that's the whole thing that you have to do. So in headless, they just set these values here. This one is the one that I put for my stuff, and for the editor, just put editor equals true, and then for the path of the project, you're just basically calling the OS, getting the OS singleton, and then calling the control working directory, current working directory. So it's just setting the current working directory to the path of the project, and that's the path you pass there on the command line. And then based on this, the logic of the project settings is going to work based on the pattern that they provide there. And that's all I have to do. And I didn't want to set on the engine. The other one I did just because it was closer to the way that they do the editor, but I realized that it doesn't matter. So just creating the static variable, and then based on this variable, on the iteration there, I check, and then I just run the thing, if this was passed. So the OS is gonna be like they do everything else, is gonna be abstract based class. That's depending what build you have, is gonna have another class that derives from this one, and it's gonna have the logic of the operational system that is going to do all this stuff related to executing processes. So you can pass this pattern here because I'm setting the path there on the OS. So it understands that the root is gonna be the scenes from the Cortex. As now it's leaking. Mm. Oh, it's leaking because it's not free. It's not making a part of the scene. So what's up with this set name? Hey, what's up? It didn't work. Oh, it's because of the owner. That's why. Yeah, this is the thing that I realized that I had to do as well. Yeah, so the main thing, like, and this was before that I confused this stuff, is that uh, so initially I thought that there was something to do with the constructor of the classes, the reason why the nodes weren't showing on the visualization, and that's why I created on the scene, and that's why I created this this function here on the node class, because I created this flag variable to be able to differentiate the nodes that were created inside of the constructor of other nodes from those that are created outside. Because I thought this was the reason why the node wasn't being saved on the scene. But now I realize that the way that they make that happen is based on the owner. So if you don't set the node of if you don't set the owner of the node, then it's not saved on the scene. So I was thinking about creating a different function, but probably just gonna do it on this one. But the issue is that the issue with doing so either obviously I can do it from outside, but it's kind of annoying because I have to do it all the time, or I can create a different function. But then the problem, I guess I can do it after I call the challenge. After I call this function, maybe I can do it. Script or C++ for game development. C++ for sure. Depends on your goals as well. So don't focus on the tool, focus on first principles. That's how I think more about it. Just like combining your objectives with the so seeking first principle understanding that goes beyond the tool, and then taking your objective into consideration to create a hierarchy of importance. So the highest importance for you has to be something you are curious about. Then from that point, you have to see what the market wants. So what most people hire for. If your goal is to if your goal is to get a job, then you have to look into the market, what the market wants. And if your goal is to just build stuff and be more entrepreneur, then you have to just think about what is the most effective. So, and then you explore the questions from that point of view, trying to get to the first principles, because every tool is going to be superficial. It's just an abstraction that is built to deal with a problem to make it easier. So the way to view language and tools is just making energy more efficient over time based on a network. So that's how all the abstractions work as well. It's just a blanket over the fundamental principles that make you more effective. But if you don't understand the fundamental principles, then you're going to build everything on a house of cards. And then it's going to depend on your values of importance, because you have to understand that it's not about what you get, it's about who you become. So there isn't a problem with using higher level abstractions, but the problem is that you become someone different than you would if you focus more on the first principles. So just different sets of skills and different people you become. So I have to ask yourself, who am I going to become if I focus more on these sets of skills? So I think that the easiest example to understand this is with YouTube and content creation. So like if you're creating a channel to get millions of views, then like you're gonna become a content creator over time, and that's gonna be your main thing. And there's gonna be ups and downs with that, because the downside is gonna be that you're always gonna be like dependent on visualization and validation from other people. So, and the upside is that you're gonna get more rewards on the short term if you are able to understand how people think and then hack their reward systems. But over the long term, it's just a different set of skills, because they're focusing more on attracting people, and then you're going to be a slave to the algorithm, to the recommendation system, and to the platform that controls the recommendation system. So you're always chasing after whatever the reward from the platform is. And the other extreme would be to just focus on the fundamental, which is what is at the core that people want, beyond the platforms and beyond the recommendation systems. And then being at the source of that. So trying to become the source of that. And that's going to be very not rewarding on the short term, because it's just like telling people to work hard and exercise, for example. Like a lot of people don't want to hear this stuff, but over time, because you become stronger and stronger and more powerful, then it turns around at some point. But obviously, the most likely to be the optimal strategy is going to be somewhere between these two extremes, because that's how the universe works. There's a relative polarity, and computation is the relationship between this relative polarity. So that's why it's impossible to say for sure like a description of sets of things you have to do. Because just with machine learning, you're always trying to, based on your current circumstances, which are unique, you have to create a funnel that takes into the consideration the context of the platforms that you are operating on, and also do things based on the first principles, which is what matters the most, which is the core of what you're doing. It's the same thing with languages. So like if you want attention fast, or if you want results fast, then you have to use abstractions and then keep the awareness that you are building everything on house cards, because when the platforms turn on you and you can't use their data servers to use their machine learning models, you're not going to be able to do anything because you don't know what you're doing. But on the other extreme, if you don't use any tools, then you become too slow and you get overtaken by the markets. So the most optimal path is probably somewhere in the middle. That depends on their circumstances and your hierarchy of values. No problem. So what I'm going to try to do is to get the parents after here. Maybe don't need to get the parents. Let me see. So I don't need to get the parents. I can just make the owner, I think. So it's set owner. This. I'm not really sure if it matters that much. On the other one, I was making the owner the root of the scene, I think. But if you make the parents, I think that, I'm pretty sure that it saves to the scene if you make the owner the parent of the child. But I guess you can get the owner. No, you can get the root of this node and then just set the owner as the root from it. So they save the information here. Or can traverse all the way through. Can get parent recursively until you get to the point where there is no parent, and that's going to be the root node. But I think I'm just going to leave it like that and see if it works. So I'm doing this so I don't have to think about. So all the nodes that are added as children of other nodes externally are going to be saved onto the scene. And the other ones, since they're created on the side of the constructor, they don't need to be added because the editor and the engine are going to run the constructor on runtime. So I think it's just human nature to not want to accept that on space and time you're always going to have to do work, because that's the nature of how things work. So that's why people are always trying to project themselves into the future, and that's how people get hacked, because other people know that. So the dominant Nash equilibrium strategy for a human being, it should be biased towards the present. So whenever you have a situation where there is risk and you think you can get away with avoiding pain now, you're most likely going to do that. So because you want to postpone to the future as much as you possibly can, because that increases your chances of survival. And because we are genetically evolved to exist in a scarce environment, that strategy makes sense because it keeps you alive for the longest time. But the problem is that because most people are designed this way, it becomes very easy to hack them because, and that's the reason why governments and everyone's always trying to use fear against people because they know they will default into not confronting the situation in the now because they want to avoid the pain of the now. So this makes people rationalize and not do the work. And then it's a paradoxical thing because if you're always rationalizing, then it accumulates over time and then it's a downward spiral. So it's a risk-reward situation. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't like studying as well, because they associate studying with slavery because of the way that society is built, because society is about power and control. So because everyone's trying to control you, since you are a child, they make you associate learning with being a slave, because they don't want to actually teach you things. They want to put you on a box. So like imprison your mind, and that's why people defend free speech, because it's very important. Like the scope of free speech is the scope of the computation that the collective can do, because the pathways of conversation, every conversation is a 3 data structure. When you put that on a graph, it's going to be a network. And that's the symbolic representation of the network is the state of the collective consciousness. So in order to gain more power and control, people try to control the narrative by limiting the scope that other people can have access to, because then they control the computation of the network and they gain more power. So because of that, things are structured in a way that everyone associates learning things with a bad feeling. And that's the reason why I think it's very important to focus on what you're curious about and not what someone else is trying to tell you to do, and stop seeking validation. Because if you do that, then it's going to be the thing that's is a natural bias towards the present and trying to avoid the inevitable. So you're always going to be chasing after something you can't control, which is other people's opinions. So even if you succeed, you're going to lose because you're chasing an illusion, and you're doing that because you don't want to confront the pain of the now, which is the existential crisis of understanding that you're going to die. So you're going to have to let go of everything. So the only thing that makes sense from that perspective, I think, is to understand that you can't run away, and it's more about becoming than getting anything. And if it is about becoming, then the question is more about what do you want to become. And I think that, so it's like Stephen Covey, or however you say that, on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about this with one of the principles is begin with the end in mind. And I think that's the way that I'm thinking now, and I think it makes most sense, because from the end, the more important part is not figuring out whether or not you can achieve something, is figuring out who you're going to become if you're trying to achieve something. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people get stuck in situations. Like, for example, the stuff that happened with Mark Zuckerberg, that he saying stuff like he apologizing for, or something like that. He didn't look too much into it, but I think the reason why a lot of times people get into the situations because human beings have this natural bias of not confronting the pain in the now, so it accumulates over time. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people also scam other people on YouTube, is because they start off in one way, but the more money and the more incentive they gain for following the path, the harder it becomes to change direction, because the path picks up momentum, and then it becomes who they are, and that's when it can be a slippery slope. So that's the dangerous part of machine learning and using LLMs. The problem is not the LLM or building stuff, is that if you're not careful, you can go into the path where you have you don't have a strong foundation, and then you're just you're going to collapse over time, because the more power you gain, you don't have the foundation to sustain it. So it's like using drugs on the gym to try to get stronger faster. If you are a beginner, it would be the perfect example of this, because you're not prepared. So what's going to happen is that you're going to gain a lot of strength fast, and then you're going to build your identity based on that. And your identity is just the gravitational force that your body has with your environment, because the sequence of software mechanisms that you have when you're navigating the space. So it's like protocols that you have when you're navigating the space to interact with the environment. And the more time you spend like being jacked after doing drugs, you're gonna create the habit of having to deal with or dealing with people in a certain way because you are jacked. And then you're going to create this identity, and then you're going to be trapped into this vessel, to this empty vessel, because you didn't build the foundation. So you skip the process, and now you're going to become a slave to the drug. But it's not a black and white thing because it's a gradient. So just like everything else. Because from the other extreme is you are addicted to foods and to water. So everyone's addicted to a certain extent. So it's not about the addiction, it's more about the place you're coming from. So the awareness you have behind the stuff that you are getting, because you have to always keep in mind that you're going to lose everything you gain. And that's why fame and money are very dangerous, because it works like a drug. If you're not careful, it takes control over you. And that's the endless path of space and time, I think. It's always a battle between the spirit and material. Because the spirit wants to change and the material wants the same. So the fluctuation of both, the computation of space-time. So let me. I think there's a lot of, from what I take as well from spirituality. I listened to the Bible audiobook, and I've read some passages of the Bible, and I watched Jordan Peterson's lectures some time ago about the Bible. So, but I don't know very well, and it doesn't matter that much to me. And also, like all the religions, they're just a distraction. But I think like what a lot of people, and that's usually what happens as well. Like someone says the truth, then the devil corrupts it by putting some lies, injecting some lies into it, so it gets distorted. And that's part of the process because everything is a hologram. So it's like a prisma of light reflecting on itself fractally that creates the hologram of space and time. So everything is going to be fractalized and it's going to be corrupted because that's the nature of the thing itself. Because there is no source, is a recursive loop. But I think what a lot of people don't understand, or the way that I think about it is like, it's not that sinning is a bad thing or that the devil is bad. It's just that the lack of awareness of what you're doing because of the human bias towards running away from pain. Because it's a lot easier to feel pleasure than it is to feel pain, it becomes a lot more likely that you're going to go into vicious cycles that are destructive by taking pleasure on the present. So it's not that it is bad to do things that give you pleasure in the present. It's more that you lack the awareness, so over time it's going to pick up momentum and then it can become self-destructive if you're not careful. So I think that's so sinning is just lacking balance with the environment because you are fractal, so everything's connected. So everything is going to come back towards you into the chain of causality that's connected to you. That's something I also saw on Twitter like a couple of days ago about the Brian Johnson thing about DAF. That I think also a lot of people, and I'm pretty confident that this is how reality works now, because it doesn't like it's the only thing that makes sense to think about, that like death is an illusion. So that's the only way that I think it can work, because death has to be birth. They have to be the same thing because existence is always trapped on itself. So it's impossible to run away from death. And that's not a bad thing because if you existed forever and you never died, you would accumulate too much information, I think. So like it becomes inconsistent because the nature of information is entropy itself. So it's like two sides of the same coin. So if you would never die, it would mean that you were never born to begin with. Because the nature of your experience is the exclusion of other stuff. Hmm. Maybe it has to be the roots of the scene. I guess an easier thing that I can do. Hmm. So I can create another function and traverse the scene. I think that's probably better. So before I save the scene, I just call the function. I'm gonna go back to the thing. Yeah, so I think that makes sense. So what I'm gonna do is just create another function here. Actually, it's better if I copy this one. So now if the node is external, I set the owner as the root, and then I can do this outsider. I can do it here. So I think that this is gonna work. So before I save the scene, I just call this function, and then traverses the whole tree, and if the nodes are external, it's gonna set the owner as the root. So hopefully it's gonna save the nodes that I added with add child external. Maybe it's the icon sidebar. Hmm, could be here. But I don't think that there is any, there isn't any icon there. So so I have to solve the other problem to see that's the issue. So I'm gonna start from here, I think. See if I can find where is the set name there is wrong. I forgot to put this. So it was right before this. Hmm. The fuck's going on? It's weird because I didn't change anything. Like the only thing that I did there on the other one was to set the variables, and it was working before. This started showing, so it might be because of this thing, but I'm not really sure. And then it's kind of weird. There has to be something related to this, but it might be because of the CSO. Chão, verdade. I think it has to be based on the node there. It's kind of weird. I think it has to be on the scene because I think what is happening is when it's reloading or saving the scene. It's before anything runs here. So that's when it's probably loading the scene. Well, why would it do that? It's like it has to do with the way that I'm saving probably. Because they have an like not sure if automatic's the correct way to say it, but the way that they set names there, if the node doesn't have a name, there's a pattern that they use there to save. Interesting. It's weird because the first time that I did this, it didn't have a scene either, and it worked. Maybe because of the cache here. Mm. Yeah, it might be. I think it's probably because of the editor. Oh, I think I know what's happening, or at least have an idea. And the reason why it's showing up the error is because it deleted the other scene, and the editor has a cache, so it's trying to load the node from the previous scene, or something like this. But then why wouldn't this happen on normal projects? I don't want to mess up the scenes on the other projects, you know. This is the case. I think it has to do with the editor. So obviously what I can do is uh, go over the functionality or figure out so that the flag you passed there is path, and I looked into that flag on the main. So I can go over the editor and then see. The problem is that it's going to be kind of annoying to figure out. Yeah, so this is the issue. Just let me think about this. So obviously there's something that happens when you pass the path there. So there was something, but I thought that it didn't matter that much because it's not what happens on the path. But they set project path equals something else, and that's the path they pass there to the global settings. But that doesn't happen on the path flag. So the way that it works that they advance the thing one, so this would be like the n would be the path. Then later on, I think they switch the variables or something. But all that is doing here is just setting the path here. Yeah, it's just moving twice here so that it skips the path. So it gets the next argument to get the path that you pass there, and then setting the current working directory on the OS should be the path. There is other option that they this one, but this one is it should be only when you pass this as the thing. So there might be something else related to this because this project path is the one that is going to be passed there. So I think if you don't pass this option, it's just going to get the it's going to be a dot because that's how we initialize this. So I assume like it's the current directory. So I know that there is some functionality on the editor that I think is on the file system that listens for notifications or whenever you change something, it updates. So I think it has something to do with this. So like it's not updating the editor cache. It's kind of weird because like if you delete a file from, but maybe I think guess the easiest way to do is to test, to create another project just to test this. So what happens when you create, but I'm pretty sure that when you create a scene from the editor and then you remove this, you delete the scene after closing the editor, it updates correctly next time. So these one thing that I can do to test, just put this here and then see if it's gonna save. But I'm pretty sure that the problem is when you create a scene, it's gonna keep a cache, and that's how you're able to save to the same name, is using the cache. So when delete the scene in the cache continues, on the saving functionality is going to is not going to be able to find the file, and also on the loading functionality, try to get the state from the cache or something like that. And that's the reason why I was getting the error where you don't have a set, you don't have a the set name is not working there, so the node doesn't have a name because I deleted the scene that the node. So the other thing that I'm gonna try is just to delete the cache from the editor here, like the names. I think there's something else going on now. It's supposed to. Yeah, but this also happened before I started deleting the nodes, I think, where it wasn't showing anything. But it's not saving the file. Mm. Stack Overflow. Was passing this thing. No. It's, yeah. It's current now here. So I'm always getting the same, so it's an infinite loop. And that's the problem. That should be one of the problems. So I did create the file now. And now it's adding all the nodes. So there is something with the, so what I'm gonna do is just delete the file. And then I'm gonna run again and see what happens. I think there's something to do with the cache from the editor. The nodes has here. So the question is why this happens on the thing that I have there, but it doesn't happen normally. Or maybe usually it does happen. It might be the case that it does happen on the editor as well. And now it's not showing the problem with the set name as well. So I think it was something to do with the cache. It's kind of weird. Because now, like, you should give the same warning. That's the thing. But I'm gonna study the file system doc anyway because I want to incorporate on the other stuff. And that's the next step that I'm gonna do. So I'm probably not gonna focus on this now. I'm gonna set the name of the thing again to simulation doc. Then see if it creates the environment. And if it does, then I'm probably gonna move on to the next step that I have there. And the next thing that I'm gonna do actually is create the class to set up the environment. I think it's gonna be environment manager, the name. But I'm not gonna use that now. I'm just gonna set up, and then after I do this, then I'm going to study the file system doc. So I want to, it's probably gonna be doing these two things at the same time. I think the Sim3 doc I'm probably not gonna use, it's just gonna be the file system. So I want to incorporate the file system on the content of the ID page there. The first thing that I'm gonna do is gonna be that. So I'm gonna search for the icon for the files as well. Then I'm gonna put on the content bar there, and then I'm gonna put file system. But first I have to create a class so that I can name the icon the name of the class. So probably what I'm gonna do is just go over with the editor sometimes. And I know that I already looked superficially into this, and it looks that they have on the notification function, they have some functionality to handle the split. So that's the thing that I wanna see if there is a generic way to not to allow the contents of the whatever is gonna be on the dock to not overflow or to not be like to be dynamic with the split container that is surrounding the thing. And the other thing to do is to maybe I should try to create. But the problem is, I guess I can use. So this is another issue. Yeah, I'm gonna test. So, but I think if that's the case, it's just gonna create two of them. But it might be a problem. I think it's not a problem actually because the way that I'm creating is based on I'm binding the index on the I. So like basically when I add, it's just gonna loop here based on the contents of the directory there. So if there's SVG, it's gonna be an icon, then it's gonna create a margin container, and it's gonna create a button inside of the margin. And then I'm connecting the press on the button, and then I'm binding the index here. So each one is gonna be unique regardless of the name. So just gonna generate the other icon, and then on the button press is gonna be based on the icon name, I think. Or so loop over the buttons. Yeah, I'm keeping track. I'm caching them on the class, and then the index is gonna indicate which one it is, and then I just get the name. Hmm. I'm setting the name based on. So this might be a problem actually, because the name's gonna be the same. The file is the same. But I think, like realistically, it doesn't matter because the icons have to be unique. It doesn't make sense to put two different icons to display the same component. So I think this doesn't matter. So for what I was trying to test, I want to put like a bunch of elements there. Maybe I can change or I can do it from the editor. I want to see what happens if I put more icons than the height of the VBox. So like if the icons go to the bottom here, to see, because I want to change this so that it has the scroller thing, like this scroll bar. So that's the after I do these two things, then I can focus on the other stuff. Oh, nice. So it looks like it worked, and it's not showing anything because it uh doesn't have icons on the thing here. I guess I can test this now. So doing margin. This is gonna be another good thing to test to see if it's gonna refresh to the original states when I. So we have to set uh, somewhere here expand icon and the minimum size here. So Oh fuck. Yeah, so this is a problem. So it's just gonna try to expand, and then becomes an issue. Also, I have to set. So the other thing you can do is set the main scene from the code. I'm probably gonna do that because I think that the editor doesn't update if you set if you set the scene as the main and then you delete the scene, the editor doesn't update the configuration, I think, and it saves the configuration on the project Godot file. So after you set the scene, it's gonna save your run main scene. So all you have to do is just set from the code. That's probably gonna do that so that I make sure that there's always a main scene that I'm setting. The main scene has to be the one that I'm currently working on. Hmm. So I think that the name of the node is scroll something. I guess I can just look here. Yeah, it's scroll bar. But I think you have to put it as that should be the parent. See minimum. I don't remember. And this is a problem. So it has to be H. This is correct. Problem is the minimum here. And it's not what I was thinking about. I know there is a node. I don't remember. So it's here. So the scene. What's the name of the scene doc? Scene tree doc. So this node has to have the file system has as well. Arts from VBox. I'm gonna have to spend time studying, I think. So probably it makes more sense to study the file system doc now. Because I'm gonna, as I study the file system doc, I'm gonna understand how they do it. Because they probably are setting up the split in a different way as well. I basically want to achieve the same thing. So like all the docs are gonna have the same pattern. So be able to have this scroll bar here, and then separate with the split so that they are resizable, and so that they allow overflowing regardless of what content the thing has. It's both here and on top here. I have to figure out how this happens. I forgot to do Enki as well. I think I'm gonna do some minutes of Enki. Then I'm probably gonna take a break, and I think I'm just gonna study. It seems that the Scene 3 docs is different than the file system, so I'm not really sure. Cause for the normal thing, I think it's probably like for the docs, the panel docs. I think it's better to have the slider in the on the bottom here. Like this slider here. Before the icon is obviously better to just have the horizontal one because it's gonna be fixed. So I think for studying this stuff here, it's probably better the scene tree. But the thing that I want to implement there is the file system. So I'm not really sure which one to study. And it doesn't look like there is any specific node here that does this. So it's probably on the notification logic or somewhere else. Might be on the editor node as well that they do this, or on the doc manager. I'm gonna study on VS Code. So close all the stuff that I have there and just open this stuff and then spend a bunch of time trying to understand how they create this. Hmm. It's a scroll container. There's only one type. So this should solve there. Hmm. So I guess based on the variables, it probably selects which one it is. Also, it adds both. So you can disable here. So it's probably a lot easier than I thought it would be. I just use this one and then I set the variables there. So the question is whether or not to It's gonna be kind of annoying to put all of this on the other one. I think I have to pass anyway. So I wanna test to see if the order matters. Like if I can create if the icon sidebar has to inherit from the scroll container or if I can inherit from the HBox container and then put the other one as a child. Like which one makes more sense? I think it probably is better if I can oh, so yeah, it has to be this one. Hmm. So I wonder how they did there. I'm gonna delete a bunch of them to see if the scroll goes away. So I imagine that you can probably change the size here because here on this one it doesn't it is not as thick as it is here. So so if you remove it goes away. Oh, it's probably because of this. Hmm. Maybe not. It's just easier to see how they did it. But I'm curious to see, understands how is it possible? Because here they are making the other. So obviously they put layers, I think. So they like the main one is gonna be an HBox, but because it has more stuff, they create the scroll inside the HBox and then they only put one component inside, I think. That's how it works. So that's basically, it's not gonna be that hard. And shortcuts. Yeah, it's a VBox container. But it's weird that they don't set anything else. So how does this work? It's because of the flag here. SB span fill. And size flags. I think the flags are on the control here, but it's not. So I guess it has to do with the size of the other, like the size of this. Yeah, but it doesn't change anything there. Trying to change the thickness of the bar. Just gonna ask Grok. What's anything? Hmm. Maybe it's another. Oh, you just think through this. It has to be this one. Is the only one. That one. Expand fill. So maybe it's here. Could be the size of the window. Doesn't change. This one is directly on the main container. So it creates this VBox and adds to the main container, then puts the V size to expand. So I should expand. So I have to put both here, I think. and then it hides this. Hmm. Toggle visibility, that should be this thing. No, toggle the display in favorite mode. Yeah, so it's probably another class. That's the only explanation. That should be somewhere else. Yeah, that should be here. Yeah, so it should be this class. So the other one should probably use this one on this one. Split container. Hmm. So the only explanation should be because the other slider is like being affected by other elements that are around it somehow. Because it seems that it's not changing the values there on the actual split container. And I think that like I can't see anything here that's a follow flux is not going to change anything. Hmm. This doesn't seem to change anything. Change the other one. Yeah. I guess I can look into the class. Yeah, this is probably a lot easier than figuring out this way. So just go split container. Oh, maybe so I typed the wrong way here. A scroll container, not split container. So maybe the other one does have, doesn't have. So I think that the easiest way to figure this out is just try to understand how they draw the thing. Usually I think it's gonna be on the notification and the draw. Let's see. Blah blah. Panel style. Yeah, it might be because it's being. Let me see what happens if I move outside. Yeah. So I'm not really sure if it looks smaller or not. Or I think it does. I forgot where it was. It's here. Yeah. Yeah, so it's gonna be here. So usually when is a class like this, they're gonna create the class using the canvas item functionality, which I think is the class that is gonna communicate with the renderings. I don't think it probably communicates with rendering server as well, but display server, I think. Yeah, display server is the one that is gonna allow you to draw stuff on the screen, I think. So it's panel style that determines, I think. And dry style box. Max size, get size. Hmm. So I don't remember really well how to. I think I never changed from here, but this should be here, right? Hmm. Interesting. So this should be the style of whatever shows up in the background, but yeah, interesting. A border width, but it's not gonna. So this is just for the contents, not the scroll there. And so I think what is happening is that it's putting the content on a panel, but the scroll is, I think it draws the scroll based on the other functionality. So each min height. Yeah, combined minimum size. This scroll. Hmm. So it uses the bars to update. So the question is whether or not it's possible to. I guess I can set the suffix scroll horizontal. Oh, so you can just set the value. You can set the. It doesn't replace the bar. Yes, so dry. So how do I change the style of the scroll? So obviously I can look into the. I'm not really sure if they have a function for this, but maybe it's like the easiest thing to do is just look into the actual scroll bar and then see how they draw this, and then look in the other class to see if they have a function to change the width of this thing cached. I do believe it's based on the theme, so it should be somewhere as. Go back to this. I don't know how to change this. So I guess the only thing you can do is use another thing. You can change the thing here. I think that there's two options. One, I change directly on the bar. I see if there's a function. So I can try to get the bar from the scroll container on the code and then set the value if there isn't a function on the other one, but I think it's not very good. So there should be another way, I think, to do this. I basically want to change the width of the thing. And I think that this is how they're gonna draw probably. So they create the triangle. I think that this is something that I want to spend more time studying as well. Yeah, but usually they're gonna use the rendering server and then they pass the resource ID. And then the rendering server is gonna probably do the Vulkan commands. And then commands runner. So maybe when it calls this, it allocates the commands for some of the queues on Vulkan. And then because it already allocated, when you change the values of the commands, it's gonna know what's supposed to do, I think. It's probably on this. Yeah, so it uses these blocks on the canvas item to build. So it's building a queue, I think, with the commands. So it first calls the allocate command, then it pushes this stuff on the queue. Then outside it changes the values. Yeah, it's changing the values that are already on the vector, and there it's probably gonna use the vector when it's time to draw. I think it doesn't matter that much right now to know this. Orange block. A command block. That's gonna be. Oh, so it's writing to the vector. It's passing this, which is the command block. I think it's moving the pointer. Yeah, that's. It's allocating space, I think, probably here on the vector. And allocating memory for the command here. I think it does like this because probably the memory is going to depend on what kind of command it is. So you have to manually allocate memory. I think that's what's happening. So it's using this to see the memory. It's allocating the memory, and then the command's going to be on the vector, and then later on it's probably going to use the blocks here when it's time to render. Not really I think that the rendering server is probably the one that is responsible for doing the draw calls, but I'm not sure. And I think that's the Vulkan functionality is on the display server. So they probably communicate somehow, but I'm gonna spend more time studying this later, probably, once I figure out the other stuff. This grabber here, they also have on the editor spin slider. So is the dot, I think, or is the thing that shows up on the like the actual thing, I think. So it's basically this this stuff that moves here. It looks like it's getting from the thing. Grabber draw. Actually, it looks like it always draws the same way. So the grabber is probably the whole thing. I have to see. I think it's doing based on the team cache, so I have to see how to either set the team cache or change the value on the team cache. I'll be right back. There's probably a function here, I think. It's gonna allow me to do this. I'll be right back. Remember if it's like that. Just add something. That's enough. Scroll style. This is weird. Scroll focus. Hmm. So it has to be this, the scroll style. So the question is how to set this. The scroll. I think. So it has to be on the theme. How do you change? That's the question. I guess you can only change through C++ call or GDScript. But in my case, C++ call. I'm going to stop streaming now and I'm going to watch some videos, I think, on how to change the theme here. Because I think that the way to change is probably on the theme, but I don't want to create a whole new thing. I want to see if I can just change the value here. But what I'm gonna do is just change the class there so I inherit from scroll container instead of a VBox container. Then I'm gonna create a member variable as a VBox container. And it's just basically gonna change that and see if I can figure out how to change the thickness so that this is thinner. But that's probably gonna be, it's not gonna be that hard, I think, to solve. So after I solve that, the thing that I have to do is just study the file system doc. So I have to study the file system doc to understand how to not overflow the contents, and also probably to clarify more how they do the separation here as well of these components. So like how do they structure the doc? Because the way that I'm thinking about doing is this way here, where each like the doc is an entry point, which is going to be a panel, and then whatever I put inside of the panel is going to be the content. So I want to have something that allows me to always have the same initial default sizes and that it is expandable in a way that doesn't overflow. So that's the ideal, I think. Because then I can do each layout's just gonna be a different configuration of docs. And on the doc manager, I create stuff to hide or show docs as well, and also to change the docs positions. So I assign for each layout, each doc's gonna have a specific name. Then the doc manager allows to rearrange the docs or show, remove docs based on whatever scene I want. And the other parts are just gonna be figuring out what components she puts inside of each thing, which is either gonna be functions or classes. Then from that point, I can start generating a bunch of things. And I think that's how it's gonna go. So each iteration, either I'm gonna change the component that is gonna be inside of a doc, or the functions that create the components inside of docs, and that's how the complexity is gonna go, I think. So after I do this, I have to study. I'm probably gonna create another component to implement these options here that they do. So I'm gonna create a component. This is probably gonna be another thing. I think that's how probably I'm gonna start with a file, but probably the way that it's gonna evolve is inside of the folder, the components folder. Each category is gonna have its own folder as it grows. So for menu bars, for example, I can have either it's gonna be a bunch of different custom classes. I have to think about whether or not to register the classes inside of the Cortex folder or inside of the Brahma. I'm probably gonna do on the Brahma, I think. Well, either I'm gonna have a bunch of classes that each one is gonna be a different bar. Like the scene is just a combination of all these different things. Or you can have or you can structure the class in a generic way that's based on the data. It changes the options. Or I can have both as well. So the challenge is to figure out why choose one or the other. So why create a generic class that changes based on the data, or why create a bunch of different classes? Which one should choose? And I'm gonna try to create things in a way that it allows me to compose a bunch of things. Yeah, so I might come back today after I take a break, and I'm going to continue following the steps. So if I don't come back today, probably soon, just gonna continue doing this. So see you then.